Hello, everybody, and welcome to the May 6th edition of Trips and Traps. We're back at Belmont, and I'm Andy Serling and Eric Donovan.
Great to be here at the Big Belmont, and we got one more race to show you from Aqueduct. We just want to show you one more race. It was the Withers Stakes from Aqueduct, but other than that, the rest of the show here will be all Belmont.
Yeah, we thought we'd tie things together. We're sorry we weren't able to bring you a show last week. Had some personal issues that got in the way of that, but here we are for the final big stake, I would say, of the Aqueduct meet, and this is the Withers. And as you see at the start, Mr. Fantasy, number 4 horse in this race, he stays a little bit in the yellow silks, but this one's for Phil, the favorite, who finishes second, who we felt had the worst of it.
Yeah, I think this one's for Phil. You know, I would have expected him to be up a little bit closer in this race here. This one's for Phil, kind of back about 4 lengths and back about 4 lengths behind, and you see Mr. Fantasy kind of taking back a little bit to Supreme Summit, who runs a weird kind of race down the backstretch. It's obvious he wants to get out here and be out in the middle of the track here. Mr. Fantasy, I thought jockey Richie Migliore did a good job letting Supreme Summit just do his own thing here.
Yeah, basically, as we were talking, Mr. Fantasy, in a certain way, because the other horse is so far on the track, it's kind of like Mr. Fantasy is on a lone lead, setting a very moderate pace, and this one's for Phil, who isn't slow himself. In fact, he set the pace on a bad inside in the Fountain of Youth down in Florida before fading in there, but I don't think that the issue was going to the lead. He's a horse with much more speed, and they're not going that fast.
Yeah, I just didn't understand why he was placed where he was in the race here. I mean, he just never, even out of the gate, he was just never up close. I was just a little bit surprised by that. Not to say that the jock did anything wrong coming out of the gate, just the position where he's in. You see, this one's for Phil now, kind of in a position where he's liable to get jammed up inside there with 2 horses to his outside there. Field's kind of bunching up a little bit as they turn for home, and Mr. Fantasy still, got things his own way. And now you see Dominguez try to go outside a little bit there with this one's for Phil, but it doesn't work out.
No question about it. Mr. Fantasy just cruising along, saying it's slow pace, and now, Migliore opens him up, and he has no problem getting in front, and this one for Phil is really caught in behind horses as the race is developed in front of him. So by the time he gets himself in the clear, Mr. Fantasy has built an insurmountable lead. Mr. Fantasy is a pretty good horse, too. Now, I think this one's for Phil is a better horse. Now, some people might want to argue that he didn't do any running till the end of the race, but my feeling is no. He was prevented from being in a position where he could have won this race. I like this one's for Phil, and I'm really interested to see, because Mr. Fantasy is not going to go to the Preakness, and I think the Connections are doing the right thing by him. You kind of disagree with me. You think maybe the Preakness is a better spot. I think the Shadwell Met is really the right spot for Mr. Fantasy. I'll be curious to see if this one's for Phil shows up in that race.
Yeah, that's a good point. We'll see where they go. I don't know. I just thought with the way the Derby developed and the way that the outcome was, why not take a shot in the Preakness with the horse like Mr. Fantasy, who, I think speed-wise in the Shadwell Met, you could be looking at 3 or 4 of the speed horses that could drill him, in that race, whereas in the Preakness he might be, one of only a couple horses that could be out there doing his own thing and being very happy doing it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that they have some concerns with him reacting badly to a big crowd. I still think the Shadwell Met is the right spot for him. I look forward to him in there, and we'll see if this one's for Phil goes in there or he goes in the Woody Stevens. He's not going to be a big price. Though in the Met, I think he'd be a very bettable price. And my feeling is, I like Mr. Fantasy as a horse, but this one's for Phil is better.
Yeah, I think he ran the much better race in the Withers. Let's get on to our first race from Belmont, and this was from opening day. Race number 4, we're taking a look at the 3 horse in here. Brad's My Hero. This is a maiden claiming race on the turf for 3-year-olds and up.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing about Brad's My Hero, he's number 3, breaking from the 2 post, and you can see him right here, and we want to show you this because he has kind of an eventful early run. Take a look at him in about 2 seconds as he will sort of jump over some shadow. We're not exactly sure what it is, but he jumps up in the air, and we'll show you the pan after this, and he's between horses, and he gets sort of taken out of the race here, and he actually, as we'll see as we make the turn, he gets completely steadied back to last in this race. And see, we're making the turn there. He's between horses, steadying back. He's now back in last, and if you take a look at the chart of this race, the winner is a stalker. He's the one in the orange silks on the outside. The horse who finishes second was sitting third. The third place finisher was sitting fourth, and the leader actually runs fourth at 14-1. It was really a race that nobody got in the race from the far back.
And you'll see here from the pan shot just how affected Brad's My Hero was at the start. Now breaks very nicely here with the pack where you want to be, considering the way the race developed and unfolded with those top 4 front runners finishing 1, 2, 3, 4. But you're going to see him have to take back out of the spot here, and just losing valuable position here. Just not a good thing for Brad's My Hero.
No question about it. He was trying the turf for the first time in this race and has a little bit of turf breeding. And I actually thought he was kind of an interesting horse, and I thought more so even after the race, because even though he runs 5th in here, he's the only horse that makes up any meaningful ground in the race. And here he is now, and we pick him by the top of the stretch because he left the picture. There's no reason to show him. He's between horses, and I felt in this stretch run on the turn there, you see he wants to get to the outside. Regime Mirage can't get him to get to the outside. He ends up trying to move inside inside of horses, not the easiest thing to do. And all in all, I thought he ran an okay race.
Yeah, I would have been curious to see if he finished any better if he was switched to the outside instead of being down inside. You bring up a good point there. It didn't really finish up all that strongly, but the way the race unfolded early on with the pace scenario playing out as slow as it was, and the fact that Brad's My Hero lost a valuable position, making that turn into the backstretch there, you certainly got his upgrade his chances next time out.
Definitely. And the inner track mile and 16th races down that straightaway chute are tricky races because of the way the course undulates. It's a tough race. Brad's My Hero won in a similar spot. I am definitely looking to bet my money next time.
All right, one more race for this first segment here, and that is another turf race. This also from opening day. It was race number 9, a sprint race on the turf for 3-year-olds and up. We're going to look at the one, Appreciate here, who gets a pretty good trip, I think, for the most part early on, but things get a little bit dicey around the turn, and Appreciate we're going to highlight down on the inside, the one with those purplish kind of silks.
Right, it's one of those, some good and some bad. The winner of this race, Golden Weekend, is 4-5 in here and wins by 5 lengths and dominates. And you were not beating that horse. Bresciate was not beating this horse. But I think Bresciate actually showed in this race with a little bit of trouble and did save ground. But clearly this is a better horse on the turf, at least turf sprints in the dirt.
He only tried turf once, actually, and that was a route back in Belmont last year, May 18th. And we're going to highlight him again just to show you where he is, because this is kind of where the trouble starts to begin for him, just around the half-mile pole there. Going to steady a little bit down inside there. That costs him a length. And then, just still some more traffic trouble as they go around the big sweeping turns here at Belmont Park. And Appreciate, I think you're right. I think he is a better turf sprinter than he is a turf router, and I think he's a better turf horse than he is a dirt horse. But you're going to see him again kind of get a little bit hampered there around the turn. So just things not working out his way, while Golden Weekend's having everything his own way on the front end. And Golden Weekend probably doesn't really need to have things his own way. He was the 4-5 favorite.
Yeah, he laid over this field. Now, obviously, he was dropping down a claiming race, but he was better than these. And Appreciate actually clunks up pretty well in here. He saved ground, angled out, blah, 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 but does angle inside of horses. And there's sort of a common theme to all of the races that we've showed in this segment, which is horses that were inside and hampered by being on the inside. And obviously you like to save ground, but first of all, saving ground at Belmont as compared to saving ground at Aqueduct is a totally different situation. With the wide sweeping turns, even on the turf courses, it's just not that important. And I think horses are more often hampered by being inside, and you want to be in the clear. So that's something that we look for a lot.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny how it just plays differently here at Belmont than it will at Aqueduct and Saratoga, especially when you consider the turf courses, how different the turf courses at Aqueduct and Saratoga play from the ones here.
No question about it. It's just a much different game. It'll be interesting because we showed Ramon Dominguez on a couple of these horses, and we're big Ramon fans, but this is the first time that Ramon has ridden at Belmont on a consistent basis, so there might be a little learning curve. I have a feeling he'll do just fine.
I'm sure I'll figure things out, but regular at Saratoga for the most part over the last few years, and regular at Aqueduct too. Not so much here at Belmont, where he's ridden at Delaware Park in the past. Well, that'll do it for our first segment of Trips and Traps here today. Keep in mind, you could send your emails to us at tripsandtraps@NYRAinc.com. We love to hear all your comments.
Absolutely. We love to hear them, and that does it for this episode.
Come on back for the second episode